of an object. Now, what edit mode can also do is what's called extruding. Extruding is when you select a group of vertices and you basically extend a copy of those vertices out. What this does is it makes it easy for you to expand the object while instead of trying to size it to the exact size you want. Now you have a general idea of what edit mode is. Let's start. First of all, open up a new scene in Blender. Once it loads, select the cube Blender. Now press tab. You'll notice the cube is now orange and little cubes have appeared at all the corners. This is because we are now in edit mode. Now to select or see in edit mode, it's the same as selecting an object. You just right click and as you can see, whichever vertex you're close to, as long as you're within a certain distance of it, it will be selected. Now, if you click on another one, you'll notice that we only have that one selected now. Now, press 3 to go into second. Now, if you want to select multiple vertices, you can do it a couple different ways. You can either hold down Shift and select every vertex you want, but this can be very time-consuming. And with bigger models, it is extremely complicated and hard to select every single one you want. So another way is to press B and click and drag around the vertices. Now, if you move around, you'll notice that 2 vertices in the back of what you've selected haven't been selected. If you notice, actually all 4, that's because the box only selects what it can see. Now the cube was covering the other 4 vertices. Now to select all of them, we either need to make another box around it, or we need to go into wireframe mode. Now, in wireframe mode, if you notice, you can see all 4 vertices around it. So then, if you press B and select it again, you'll notice that now the entire box is selected. Now, if you want to deselect all the vertices you selected, just press A and all the vertices will be deselected. Now to select all of them, just press A. Now this can also be used in object modes for selecting all of the objects in the scene and deselecting all of the objects in the scene, but when you're in edit mode, it only works with object that you have selected. Okay, so now that we're in wireframe mode, press B and go to the side again, and deselect all of them, and then press B again and select all of them on the left side. Now, and now what we're going to do, we're going to extrude these, okay? Now, to extrude, what we're going to do is we're just going to press E, and you'll notice that now we can move out to the left, and if you notice, it is expanded to the left. Now, if you left click, it'll select where it is. If you right click, then it'll still keep extrusion, but it'll place it back where the original vertices were. And to move it, it's exactly the same as an object. You can slide it with the cursors, you can grab it with G, you can size it down with S, you can really do anything with it. You can move it however you want and it'll still be connected with it. And you'll notice, I'm just going to move it up now, you'll notice that the lines on it also move to make sure that it's still connected. You can also rotate again. Really, it acts like an object, but it only selects a certain part of that object. Now, one thing you can do in edit mode is you can add more objects into the scene. Now, I have my computer set up so I can just press spacebar to get to the add mesh. If you don't have it set up that way, you can either go up to the add tab or you can click Shift A and it'll bring up the mesh tab. Now, if you select another cube, you'll notice it goes into the same spot, and since that's what's selected, you can move it around. But if you press Tab, then you notice that it is still connected to the first cube we made. So you notice if I try to move any of this around, it'll move the entire thing. It is actually become part of the object. If you add any object while in edit mode, whatever object you have selected, that new object becomes part of it. Okay? Now, this is something to remember. That's something very important to remember. Now, let's delete the extruded part and the new cube made. Let's just delete all of this. And you'll see that there's tons of different settings. If you delete vertices, then what it'll do is it'll delete really everything connecting to the vertices that you made. If you select edges, then only the edges will be deleted, and the faces will also be deleted too. Now, if you just select faces, then we'll leave the edges and vertices. So vertices delete everything, edges just delete edges and faces only delete faces. We're going to select vertices to delete all of this. Now, if we exit out of wireframe mode by pressing Z again, and we move around, you'll notice that now there is a hole in the box. It is an empty box now. To put that face back, like let's say that we deleted the extruded part, but we want to connect all of that together with face. We select all of the vertices that we want the face to be in between, all of them that are going to be corners to it, and just press F. And then that places a face in between all of those, connecting them together. Now, let's exit out of edit mode. Let's say the two separate objects that you want to connect. Now, you could try and make the second object again while in edit mode, but the thing is, if you have two complex models that took you a while to do, you may not want to have both of them. You may not want to remake that model entirely again, or make it connected to that object. So we have two different objects right here, different cubes, and if we want to connect together, there's two different ways. One way is to make them the same object, and the other way is to have it so then they're still separate objects, but if one object moves, then the other object will move. I'm going to show you the first way first that makes them one object. So you hit Shift and click on the next one, or click B and select all of them together in box as in edit mode. Now that we have them selected, we hit Control J. That will turn them into one object. Now, the second is called parenting. Think of it kind of like a child follows a parent around, but they're still separate people. So what we're going to do is we're going to select the object that we want to follow the other object first, okay? So you select the child first, then you select the parent. After that, you hit Control P, and then click Object. Now, if we click this bottom one, the parent, then we move around, you'll see that they move together. But if we select the top one and move that, you'll notice that the other object doesn't move. This is a way to keep them separate objects while still being able to move them together. Now, let's say that we want to get into a little bit more detail. Let's say we want to add more vertices to this object, okay, the cube on the bottom. There's a couple different ways. The first is to do what's called subdividing. So first of all, select the entire cube by clicking A twice. Now, to subdivide, you go into edit mode, which we're already in, and you press double. It'll open up a giant menu. Now click subdivide. And as you can see, it basically splits that object into smaller boxes. Now you can select the vertice in the middle now and move it around, and it will move that part. You can also select any of them here. It really added more, it just made it so it was more detailed and added more to it, more vertices, so you can do more with it. Now I'm going to back out of it and Control Z to undo everything until before I subdivide it, so I can show you the next way. The next way is called loop cut, okay? Now, to loop cut, you press Control R. Oh, actually, deselect all of the vertices first, and then hit Control R. Now, then you'll notice that if you mouse over certain areas, you can get this purple ring around your object. Now, what it'll do is, this is if you want it to be, detailed in a certain direction. Like, let's say that you want to add all vertices all around it. You just want to add vertices on this path all around it, okay? And you can mouse over to the edges for that and click. As you can see, what it's now done is now selected a bar that goes all the way around the object, but only on one vertex, and you can move it around to any part of the object. Again, just like extruding, left-click, place where it is, right-click to bring it back to the middle. Now, if we mouse around, you can see that there's the ring around the sides of it, but in the front and back, there isn't any of it, and there's no vertices in the middle of any of the faces at all. It's just basically it's called loop cutting because it makes a loop around there, and it basically cuts it in half, but only in a certain way. Now, Blender has a group of actions called modifiers. They help do many different actions quickly. They make it so then you can go through a lot of the things you have a lot quicker. So, first of all, exit out of edit mode because you cannot actually apply any modifiers while you're in edit mode. Okay. So, to go to the modifiers page, you mouse over to this toolbar and look for the little wrench. This is when you click on it, then you open up the modifier page. Now, click add a modifier, and it shows all of the different modifiers. There are a couple I'm going to explain. More of them I'm going to explain in detail later, but for now I'm only going to explain some of the more useful ones. All of them do have their own use, but I'm just going to show you a couple of the ones that are used the most. Three, two, one. So here's a model I made earlier. It's a fourth of a very basic table. All I did is size it around, loop cut it, and extrude it until I got a fourth of a table. Now if you notice, the inside of it is hollow. Okay? Now I could spend time trying to make the other three sides exactly like this one, but instead I'm just going to use a modifier. So I open up the modifiers tab, and I click mirror modifier. And as you can see, I now have half a table. This is because the mirror modifier has it set so that automatically, once you click it, then it mirrors what you have on the x-axis. Now, the point it'll mirror it on is this little tiny dot in the middle, right here. Okay? So if you notice, if I go into edit mode, and I move this farther away, it'll move that part too. You have to move them just right, so then it's even. Now, to mirror the rest of the table, first I'm going to exit out of edit mode, and I'm going to move around so you can see better. And now I'm going to select the Y modifier. As you can see, I now have a complete table with all four sides exactly even. Now, if you noticed before, when I went into edit mode, only a fourth of the table was actually editable. That is because the edit modifier hasn't actually been applied yet. It is showing you what the edit modifier would do, but it has not actually been applied to the object yet. So if you notice, if I click on part and move it, it'll move on all four of them. But once I apply it, then it will actually think of it as a single object. So let's just move that down quick. Exit out of edit mode, because right now I'm going to show you. You click apply, it says modifier not applied in edit mode. It comes up with this bear. So exit out of edit mode with tab and click apply. Now, you won't really see any change except for the modifier disappearing. And then if you click tab, you notice that now the entire table can be edited. And also, if I move, let's say this one, over, the one on the other side does not move. That is because since the mirror modifier has been applied, it now sees this as an entirely separate object. So it is a complete object and not four different parts of an object. If you try and apply modifiers in edit mode at all, you can never do it. You can add modifiers in edit mode, so you can go and click add modifier and click like mirror again, but the thing is you cannot actually apply them. That's one thing you really have to remember. Three, two, one. Now we're going to make a basic graph. First, go into edit mode with the normal cube and subedit. Now, move vertices around a little bit so then they're not as even. Just like move it back a little bit, move them down. Just make it kind of warped, kind of a warped shape. Now, I'm going to fast forward through this because my computer doesn't like my video editing software or video recording software. So it takes me a while to select everything. So just going to fast forward through this. 3, 2, 1. Now that I have a oddly morphed cube, I go to the modifiers page. And again, I'm going to exit out of edit mode, and I'm going to click add modifier. Now this time, I'm going, instead of selecting mirror, I'm going to select subdivision surface. This is also known as subsurface, okay? Now, if you notice, it doesn't really entirely look like a rock yet, but part of that is just because I didn't move it around enough. Now, if you notice, if you go into edit mode after you apply a subsurface, you'll notice that it has the actual original locations of all of the different vertices. It hasn't actually moved to where the cube has been now. So if you notice, if we move this on, it moves the object inside of it. Now, one thing I forgot to do is I forgot to hit smooth. So now click smooth, and now apply. Now, if you notice, if we tab again, it has actually now made more vertices than earlier. After we clicked apply, then it made it so then there's now more vertices in the scene. Now, if you were to look at this in render mode, then you see that actually has changed. The one thing that you can do with the subs modifier that I forgot to show you is this. That what you can actually do with the subsurf modifier is you can actually set it so that you see it at a lower subsurf rate than it will be when you actually render it. You can change that right here with the view and render. What to do is it will make it so then at the view it'll actually have it be less vertices and less smooth when we actually look at it than when we actually render. So if we put the render up, let's say 5, then if we render, you'll notice that it's less smoother than how it looks in view. This is because since it makes it so then there's more vertices on it, so then it can be smoother. Then the more we have subdivided or subsurface, then the laggier our computer will be. And if you get into very complex models with this, then you'll notice that your computer can slow down a lot. So that's why there's a difference in view and render. Usually I just keep the view at 1 or 2, most of the time 2, because I think that's a good number to keep it at. It's not too high, but it's still a fairly good number to see it fairly smooth. Now, the one thing you have to remember is that the more view you have set to, the more processing speed your computer has to use. If you have an older computer, you'll want to keep it as low as you possibly can. So I'd suggest just 1. Now I'm going to click apply, and now if we render, you'll notice that since it's just a gray blob, and it doesn't really look that much like a rock. Now, I could actually give it a rock texture, and that would make it look a lot more realistic. But right now, I'm just going to add a base texture to it. So I'm going to go into here. For type, I'm just going to hit marble. And then I'm going to scroll down and change the pink color to a grayish color. I'm going to go in there, change that to the middle. And then change this to really dark gray. I'm going to click over that. And then for projection, instead of flat, I could use cube, but I like with rock, I like how the sphere looks better. So now I'm going to, and if you notice, first of all, I didn't really set it up right so that it'll actually look like rock. And second of all, you'll notice that there's that really shiny part. And rocks, most rocks at least, aren't really that shiny. If I was going for an actual marble look, I may want it to be that shiny, but for this, I don't want that, okay? So first of all, I'm going to change the actual color to a darker gray, so it'll have less of a contrast. And after that, I'm going to change specularity, which is the amount of light it reflects. And I'm going to change it from 0.5 to 0.1. Now that'll get still a little bit of reflection, not that much. So if I run again, and you'll notice there's that little tiny bit, not that much. Now, again, this is a very realistic texture for a rock, but it works fairly well. Now, one thing you'll notice though in it, that this rock is extremely smooth. This for one is because of the subsurface, but rocks aren't that smooth usually. Usually they are fairly rough if you just find rock laying outside. So we're going to add a normal map to it. A normal map is when we make a texture affect how the object looks. To add a normal map, go to the texture panel and scroll down until we see under the influence tab, geometry. Now click on the first one under geometry, the first little checkmark box. You'll notice that the one on the site has now lit up. That's because the normal value has been selected. Now if we render it, then you can see now it's a little more rough and it actually has a actual texture to it. Now, if you don't want it this much, like this, rough and jagged, you can change down the geometry, no map, right? Just like number there, or scrolling over and see that now it's actually not as rough. But normal map is just a very simple, easy way to change how the object you have selected looks. Normal maps are used a lot because they are very useful. You can use them to get little tiny detail that would take you hours and hours and hours to try and get actually modeling them. And they really don't change the render rate almost at all. You won't really see a change in it at all unless you have thousands and thousands of normal maps applied to different objects. Now, this concludes the second tutorial about Blender. Please comment if you have any questions or want me to do a tutorial explaining a certain thing in Blender. I know I didn't go into too much detail on any subject in this tutorial, but I really wanted to explain many different things in this tutorial. Please show me any of the animations you have made or anything that you made in Blender by posting a video response to this tutorial or sending me a link to your YouTube video or your Vimeo video in just a comment to me with the link to your video. Thank you, and hope you tune in next time to the tutorial without aim.